everyone. My name is Audra Mclver, and I am the strategic commander of Plan of Attack. Basically, my business partner, Chris Clark, and I, we decided that we didn't put a whole lot of value into titles, so we decided to have fun with it, which is why I'm the strategic commander. Anyway, I've been doing video game PR for about, I guess, 13 years now. It's an ever-changing landscape, as you can imagine. When I first started out, one of the mobile games that we launched, the big feature that we could talk about was that it was in color. So obviously things have changed quite a bit since then, and the way that you go about doing PR has as well. So I'm going to walk you through 25 tips, and I've got 20 minutes. So it's going to go kind of at a brisk pace. But please know that if any of you would like to have my slide presentation after, please just get my card and email me. I'm happy to send it to you because it's a text-heavy presentation because I was expecting, I set it up that way because I knew I didn't have a lot of time. So without further ado, 25 tips for global indie PR. Tip number 1. Figure out what's unique about your game. What is it that makes your game special? Make sure that you involve your team in this. I'm sorry, one moment, I just need to. Sorry about that. Okay. So, what does your game have that no other game has? Involve your team in. Everybody make a list of like 5 things that you think are really unique features that you don't think have been done before or maybe have not been done well before. And then sit down with your team and go through the lists and pull the 5 best ones together, and then those are going to be your primary features that you want to promote about your game. So you also need a studio spokesperson. This should be someone who is a confident speaker, someone very charismatic, who speaks clearly and is very passionate about your product. This will be the person that you have for interviews and for when you submit for speaking opportunities at conferences. This will be the person that you do for that. So it's very important to have a studio spokesperson that is well versed in how to deal with media, who is media trained, shall I say. Okay, so now that I've just said to have a studio spokesperson, which is still definitely a very good idea, throw taboo out the window and don't do everything the same way as everyone else is doing it just because they're doing it. Just because everyone else is doing something does not mean that it's the correct way, and it doesn't mean that it's the right thing for your product either. It's very important to instill in your team a jack-of-all-trades mentality that, excuse me, a jack-of-all-trades mentality so that everyone can kind of do a little bit of everything. This is especially important for indie developers because usually you have a pretty lean and mean team and you need them to kind of be able to jump in and do everything. This is especially important with community management. Tip number 4, identify the influencers. So PR is all about influencing the influencers. The influencers are traditional media, social media, YouTube streamers, bloggers, Twitch streamers. These people influence the players that you want to ultimately reach. So you need to figure out which ones of them cover or enjoy genres that are similar to your game, and then focus on reaching out to them first. This will also save you time, and it'll make you less of a pest to people if you're pitching them something that they clearly are not interested in. Tip number 5, what do media want? So media, today's landscape is so crowded that there's a lot of competition out there. Media receive 30 to 50, sometimes 80 press releases a day. So think about what your message is, and try to make sure that it's newsworthy. Don't waste their time. Put yourself in their shoes. You would not want someone spamming you all day, every day, so don't do it to them. And just make sure that whatever you're talking about is something unique and something newsworthy, something that's new, something that you're announcing, not saying something like, this game that's been out for a month has this feature in it or something like that. That's old news, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to cost you time and effort. Tip number 6, build a media database. This is extremely important for obvious reasons, so I'm not going to tell you why it's important. I'm just going to tell you how to do it. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of research. So what you need, a good first step is if you go to a large video game conference like GDC in San Francisco or E3, something like that, they usually will publish a press list. So try to get your hands on that press list and then incorporate that information into your database and start doing research on the editors included in that press list to figure out which ones are appropriate for you. Because not all of them will be. And these press lists are long, so it is quite a timely task, but it's very important. You can also do research on games that are maybe your competitors that have preceded your game. See who covered those games and who covered them favorably, and that will kind of tell you which editors you want to contact with your game. Again, making sure that you reinforce what your key features are, which are hopefully a little bit different from your competitors. And then we use Google Drive for a number of things. It's a great tool. If you have another database tool, that's also fine. So it really is what you prefer, but Google Drive is a great tool, and you can edit it in real time, so you can make changes to the database. But this is really your bread and butter, so make sure that you back up regularly. Tip number 7, the 80-20 rule. Basically, the 80-20 rule is that 20% of the media you are targeting with your product will be providing 80% of the coverage. So it basically means that 20% of the media are going to like your game. And so they're going to be the ones posting about it. So you want to give them extra special attention. You don't want to ignore the other 80% of the media who may not be as jazzed about your game, but you do want to focus on the ones that really do like it. And again, to find those media, you really need to do your homework and do research to see who is writing about games that fall into your genre. Tip number 8, start writing a press release early. So press releases can always change, but if you start to write a press release early, it's going to help you organize, you and your whole team, organize your thoughts and organize the direction that you want your campaign to go in. Your promotional campaign might change, but if you start writing the press release, then you'll kind of have an idea of what it is that you want to say and when you want to say it, and then that can always change, but it really helps, we've seen it help a lot of developers just kind of organize their thoughts and what they want to say and when. The headline needs to be very catchy, or at least kind of say what the news is about. Don't be wishy-washy with the headline because you'll lose people. Remember, journalists are getting, sometimes 80 press releases a day. If yours doesn't grab their attention, it's not going to be read. The first paragraph of your press release should always basically contain all of the information that is in the press release should be in the first paragraph. You can expand on that information in the rest of the press release, but the first paragraph should really have everything in it because, again, 80 press releases a day, sometimes they're not going to have time to read more than the first paragraph. So you want to make sure that you get your point across as quickly and as clearly as possible. And then the rest of the body of the press release, you can have a quote and kind of give more details about what you've introduced in the first paragraph and the headline. Tip number 9. Localize your press releases. Okay, so, and this actually makes sense if you think about it this way. If you have an editor in Spain, for instance, whose audience is all Spanish speaking, and they receive 50 to 80 press releases a day, which ones do you think they're going to just take and post on the site immediately? Probably the ones they don't have to localize themselves. It's easier for them to just take it and post it. So we've seen that really, really help with pickup of press releases if you localize it. It is an additional budget. Localization agencies usually charge anywhere between 14 cents to 16 cents per word. So it is a little bit of an additional fee, but it's definitely worth it if you have a really big news announcement that you want to maximize your coverage. We definitely recommend for European, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. If you want to be a little bit tighter with your budget, maybe go for French and German, obviously English as well, but France and Germany are the biggest markets in Europe, so if you're kind of pushed, you can do it that way. Press release timing. So like most of us, media they're not huge fans of Mondays. It's the first day of the week. Usually they have an inbox clogged with emails that they've received over the weekend that they have to go through. So we don't recommend sending out press releases on Monday just because it's kind of a day. Sometimes it can't be helped, and in that case it's fine. Just make sure that it goes out in the morning. But typically try to stay away from Mondays. Also Fridays. Fridays are usually the days that if they're going to take a long weekend, that's the day that they take off. So Fridays, if you can avoid it, avoid it. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are fine. Send out typically in the morning in each of your territories. So if you're sending out a press release in Europe, send it out in the morning in Europe and then send it out that afternoon in the US, meaning morning in the US. So you want to kind of plan it that way so that it pops up and you're not sending a press release at 6 p.m. or something. Don't ever do that. You will not get any coverage. You might get some the next day, but it's not a good idea. And by all means, avoid weekends and holidays. With an international PR campaign, it's important for you to research in your target territories what their holidays are, because they are always different. And then sometimes you may have to pick and choose which territory you do send it to them on a holiday, because I think every day is a holiday somewhere. So just be careful about it, and again, do your research and know who you're sending this out to. Don't send a press release out to the UK on Boxing Day, for instance. It's the day after Christmas and no one is working that day. Tip number 11, the perfect screenshot. So this is very important. Consumers, gamers are much more visual now. So this is kind of what you want to display about your game, not only to the players, but also to the media. It's a snapshot of your game. And if it's a good screenshot, they're more likely to kind of want more, kind of want to know more about your game. So for every 50 screenshots you take, only about 4 to 5 should actually make the cut. You want to be hard on yourself on this. Be overly critical. And don't say, oh, it's good enough. There is no good enough. There's only good or bad. Just be critical about it. They're used a lot more frequently than key art. Key art is better for kind of more of an interview piece or like a background story or something like that. If you're sending out screenshots with, say, your game announcement, you want to make sure that those are some really snazzy screenshots, well polished, that you don't have a ton of blank space. I have got a screen here for you in just a moment. Okay, so you see here there's no dead space in this screenshot. You have action happening in the middle and to the right and to the left, and you have a sense of movement into the screenshot. So this is kind of what we're going for with a well-composed screenshot. This is the kind of thing that you want to do. It gives a nice little snapshot of what is going on in the game and what the purpose is. Tip number 12, video content. So over 4 billion videos are viewed daily on YouTube, and over 60 hours of video are watched per minute. So this just goes to show, again, that the consumer has become a lot more visual nowadays. They're not reading as much, they're watching more. So you want to have a very good, we highly recommend having a very good trailer or video for your game. It's likely to get a lot more pickup from the press because it is very visual. And then you'll also have more of the YouTube influencers and stuff kind of looking at that and thinking, oh, well, how could I turn this into a video stream that I can comment on or something like that. It's a very, very good way of showing off your game, showing off the best features, and you're controlling the message. You're saying, this is what I want you to see about my game. This is the best part of the game. And you want it to be action-packed. Don't make it too long. Definitely nothing more than 3 minutes. I would say even less. Attention spans, unfortunately, are shrinking. So don't ask someone to watch a 15-minute gameplay video because you'll lose people. Or if you do want to have people do that, put everything at the beginning because you're going to lose people after a couple of minutes. Factors such as genre and how well-known your title is will dictate the style and content of your video. If you're working with a really popular IP, you may already have some notoriety there, and so then you just want to show off how your game handles this IP in a new and unique way. Also on video content, don't just rely on CG trailers. We all love CG trailers, but they're expensive to make, and they're usually not actually indicative of the actual game. So an actual gameplay video that shows what players can expect when they buy your game is much, much better. And it's much more influential and has a greater impact than a CG trailer. CG trailers are really fun at conferences like E3 and stuff, and they're cool to see, but again, if you have to get more bang for your buck, so to speak, go with a gameplay video. It's a much better route. If your game is really heavy on features, you might even want to consider a video campaign that is spaced out, that each video focuses on a different feature. This is a great way to kind of keep the momentum going for your game. This is more for PC and console titles because obviously a mobile game, I'll go over that later on, but a mobile game is a much shorter launch time frame. So if you have a mobile game that actually lends itself well to trailers, probably just one is going to be fine. Unless it's a really core mobile game, and then you can still do the drip feed. Tip number 13, build a great press kit. Have, I'd say 10 to 15 really good screenshots in there. Have bios of all of the executive team, including your company spokesperson. Have headshots of your company spokesperson, if that's something that you want to promote in interviews and stuff like that. Have all of your news in the press kit, any press release that you've already released, make sure to include that in the press kit, as well as any concept art, anything that you want the press to engage with. Put that in your press kit and make sure that it's easily accessible for them. So include watermarked screens and unwatermarked screens because some press will not run a screen with a watermark on it, so you need to give them the option to do what they want to do with these assets. Host the press kit somewhere easily accessible. Games Press, you can add all of your assets there for free. You just want to make it easy for if a journalist receives your press release, always include a link to your press release in a link to your press kit in the press release so that it's easy for them to just click on and download the assets that they need. Make it easy for them. They get a lot of requests for coverage, so make it as easy as possible for the press to cover your game if they want to. A game and studio blog. The studio blog is very important for raising your studio profile so that people know who you are. This helps with, trying to trying to acquire financing. It helps with a number of different things. So it's good for people to know who you are as a studio. And then also for a game blog, if you have a game that has kind of a longer, it's a more core title, and that has kind of a longer development cycle, then it might give you a chance to kind of write about your experiences. Have different developers do a blog each week or something. You definitely want to keep, I think this is on the next. Yeah, you definitely want to keep the blogs coming. Once you start a blog and you start getting people to be interested in this and start reading your blog, you want to keep it coming a minimum of every 2 weeks. If it's sporadic and players don't know when your next blog is going to go up, they're not going to go back and visit your site and look for it. So you want to be consistent with the blog. And get your readers to participate. Ask for feedback, comments, and suggestions. This is kind of like free work because they are doing some of the work, and then you just have to respond. So definitely make sure you engage your players. This is very important for building your community. And these will be the people who are telling their friends about the game, and so on and so on. Tip number 15, the pitch. So this is your first and sometimes only chance to get an editor's attention. You want to make it snappy and interesting and short. Don't give them a page of text where somewhere embedded in there is what you're actually trying to say, because they don't have time to read all of that. And if you log yourself down with pleasantries in the first paragraph, then they may say, okay, well, seems like a very nice person, but I don't have time to read through all of this. So be short and to the point. Be nice, be pleasant, but don't make it all about that. Make it a really good pitch. And brainstorm pitch ideas with your team, and then research which pitch you think will work best for which outlet. Again, research and work with your team. Your team is full of creative minds, and all of these people can come together. And a lot of times, if you bounce ideas off of each other, you'll actually come up with some really cool pitches as well. Okay, developer diaries and video walkthroughs. So developer diaries are a great way of engaging your audience. We recommend doing video developer diaries nowadays if you can, because again, the players are more visual. So this is going to be a lot more engaging to players than having a long wall of text that just talks about how you came up with the concept of putting this feature into your game, etc. That is still interesting, but if you can make it into a video, that's even more interesting. And this, again, needs to be quite regular. You want to focus on a different aspect of the project each week. Again, this is more for kind of a title with a longer development cycle. Add some humor, be yourself, but keep in mind that viewers are going to be turned off if you kind of reiterate the same thing every week. So before you launch a video developer campaign, a video walkthrough campaign, you want to make sure that you sit down with your team and brainstorm and know what you're going to cover when, and be organized about it so that you can keep the content coming regularly. Number 17, connecting on social media. Social media, I don't need to tell you guys why it's important now, so I'm not really going to spend that much time on this, but just make sure that you monitor your social media channels regularly. Listen to your fans. If somebody has an issue and you don't get back to them soon, they will crucify you. So just make sure that you pay attention to what you're posting on social media, what everyone in your team is posting on social media, and what the response is. This is why larger companies hire community managers, because it is a full-time job. Social media is no joke, so be careful with it, but it is also important to do. So, number 18, a preview campaign. So this is also for a game with a longer development cycle. You can, like a PC or console title, you can do a preview campaign. It's easiest with PC because Steam makes it nice and easy. But get some first impressions of your game. You want the build to be polished, but it doesn't have to be completely finished. And if it's feature complete, that's great, but the preview campaign is a good way to get editors interested in your game and get players interested in your game and looking forward to it. And Editors are sometimes a little kinder with previews because they know that the game is not finished. And pursue previews at least a month before the code is available. All right, number 19, review campaign. Pitch reviews early under embargo until launch day. So the way that this works is you get the codes, a week to 2 weeks ahead of the launch, and you go ahead and start pitching those out to editors, and you say, please don't post the review until this day. This is our day of launch. And then that way, when you have the game launch, you have all those reviews go live on that day. So it's kind of like a maximum amount of exposure all in that one day. And that's the day that you really want to get people downloading your game and talking about your game, because that will continue. Yes, and send the first review builds to the outlets that have previewed your game favorably. Give them a little bit of love if they loved your game. And be prepared to follow up multiple times. Again, these editors are very busy, so it's nothing personal if they don't get back to you immediately sometimes. They're just really busy. So be prepared to follow up multiple times, but don't be a pest. Working with video streamers. So video streaming is entertainment, not traditional media. YouTubers and Twitchers are more influential than any other type of media right now, but it necessitates a different approach. You really need to know who you're pitching, watch some of their videos, and make sure that your pitch is targeted to them specifically, and it's a unique pitch for them. Then it makes them feel more special. They're more likely to be engaged in your game. Learn from mistakes and learn from your successes. Don't make the same mistake twice, but when you do make a mistake, practice humility and pride simultaneously. When you do make a mistake, figure out why that mistake was made. Don't freak out about it, just figure out how to fix it. And then when you have a success, be proud of that. Pat yourself on the back every once in a while. We're in the video game industry, we're here to have fun. Don't just constantly beat yourself up. Okay, so events. It's really, if you have the budget for it, it's really important to go to some consumer events and some trade industry events, such as GDC and, say, PAX Prime or something like that, because you want to get your game in front of consumers when you're there, when you have developers there to actually walk them through the game and give them a good experience. It's also important for media to be able to walk them through the game as well. Okay, stay in the news. Keep your game in the news. Again, this goes back to planning at the beginning. Figure out how you can come up with interesting subjects along a period of time so that you can constantly have something to talk about with your product. This is important in staying in the news because you always want to have something that's newsworthy. Corporate communications, increase your studio profile by submitting your company spokesperson for speaking opportunities and different conferences, things like that. That's a really great way. And then also pitch interviews, try to get interviews with the trade media so that they can kind of get the deeper story behind your studio, not just your product. Oh, and submit thought leadership blog posts as well. There are several industry sites that do accept those if it's something compelling. Research. I know I've used that term several times, so hopefully you guys will take that away from this talk in general. You really need to know your competitors. You need to know the media. You need to know who's gonna like your game. You need to know your audience. You need to know how to reach your audience. You really need to put a lot of effort into planning and researching at the beginning of the campaign so that you are not kind of lost in a maze and not knowing who to reach out to, because that usually leads to spamming a bunch of editors, which again, they're very busy, they don't like that. Okay, so here's a snapshot of a mobile launch, just because I actually added this slide just this morning when I saw the report about the games industry in India. It's mostly mobile. So a mobile game is a very truncated timeline. It's about 6 weeks instead of 6 months that you would have for a console or PC title, sometimes even longer for those. There's no preview campaign with a mobile title unless you have a really, really core mobile title that's really pushing the boundaries with technology or something like that. Normally, for a typical mobile game, you want to complete the game and submit it, And once it passes submission, then you announce that the game is coming and you announce the date that it's coming. And what we usually do is above the press release, before anything is published, we put a note just to the editors and say we do have review codes available for this title. If you're interested in reviewing, write to us. And then you can also use those review codes to actively pitch the editors for reviews. And again, under embargo, have those reviews all launch on the day of launch, on the day that the embargo lifts. This is important because, again, maximum exposure that first day. It's especially important with mobile because mobile is the most saturated part of the video game market. Follow up with press multiple times, but again, don't be a complete pest. You want to follow up with gentle nudges, not you must cover my game, you must cover my game. That doesn't go over that well. And put yourself in their shoes. You probably wouldn't like that either if somebody was emailing you constantly asking for something that, it's a turnoff for sure, and you don't want to do that. You want to think about the editors. So basically, that is it. The takeaways, again, research, plan ahead, and empathize with the editors. Put yourselves in their shoes and think about how busy they are and think about what would you want to cover if you were in their place. So anyway.